Evening, everyone, or morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I look forward to sharing with you today. I hope you can hear me. Just let me know if you can hear me or if you can't hear me. And if you can send a message just in the chat box, let me know if you can hear and if everything is working for you. Really looking forward to sharing with you in this webinar today. So yeah, we'll just get into it in about a minute here. And if you are in the webinar, please just in the chat box, let me know where you are in the world. I'd love to hear from you and just know where you are in the world today. In Vancouver, Canada, it is 9 p.m. So it's a little bit late for us, but I really wanted to make sure that we got an opportunity to share with you. So let's get started in about a minute here. All righty, ladies and gents. So thanks for joining us today. Really excited to be able to share with you this webinar on how to get alignment within your strategic plan. And without a further ado, we'll get started. And if you can't hear me, just make sure you put a message in the box just to make sure that you can hear and see everything. Not a problem. So today's presentation, I want to talk to you for about 45 minutes about how to create your strategic plan. So first of all, what are the things that you need to know in order to create an aligned strategic plan? We're going to go over some of the case studies, and what we've done with our clients. And then we're going to go over our process for creating an aligned strategic plan. And then after, going to be available to answer any questions you have after the session. So be sure to enter it in the chat box if you do have any questions, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. So a little bit about me. My name's Anthony C. Taylor. I'm the managing partner at SME Strategy Consulting. We facilitate strategic planning sessions for SMEs, small to medium enterprises, government, schools, and not-for-profits. Last year alone, I facilitated over 75 different strategic planning sessions, so taking me all over the world. And I've also written 2 books, one on strategic planning and one on entrepreneurship, all the things that I wish I knew when I first started my business. And what I wanted to share with you tonight, in addition to obviously our process, is really my why for doing this. Because as I started this business 10 years ago, I really had like a purpose in mind. And it's not just to do strategic planning because I love to do strategic planning, but I do strategic planning because it's my way of changing the world and having an impact in the world. I worked with a lot of not-for-profits and tried to do a lot of impact work in my earlier careers and as an entrepreneur. And I just found that there were so many people that had no clarity in terms of where they were going. They were frustrated. They were unsure of what they wanted to accomplish, and they had no direction. And then for not-for-profits or charity organizations is they wanted to accomplish so much, but weren't able to actually do it. And it ended up getting people frustrated in the organization because they weren't moving forward and weren't making progress. So the other thing I really love is I love people. And I know that strategic planning can help people love their job. And if you love your job and if you people love your job, it's going to positively impact everybody around you, which is going to positively impact their families and it's positively impact their communities. And that's what's ultimately going to change the world. So we can change the world and we can change communities and we can change people's lives bit by bit through strategic planning. So that's really why I wanted to share with you tonight and why I wanted to have this webinar. So is this training for you? Like, are you in the right place tonight? So are you on a senior leadership team? Are you leading a team or part of a team, as in, are you like a middle manager or something like that? Or are you running a business or an organization? And if so, you are in the right place. I really want to make sure that today's training is made for you specifically. So now, what we have to offer you. So sometimes when you watch a webinar, you're waiting at the end for like, well, what is this guy trying to sell me? So obviously SME Strategy is a business. We offer strategic planning services, but after the webinar, if you enjoy what we have to share and you think that we have a good process that'll be helpful for you, then you'll have the opportunity to take our course about the strategic planning process, and it'll walk you through the individual steps in the strategic planning process and help you, oh goodness gracious, sorry guys. Help you through the process of creating a strategic plan. And you'll also have an opportunity to learn more about our consulting services and what we do for companies. So I want to talk to you first and foremost about getting alignment with your team, and why is it so important to get alignment with your team. Now, I think of alignment and I think of the future as sort of like a picture of what we want to accomplish, sort of an ideal future state. Now, I have a lot of analogies that I use. Often I refer to the future as sort of a blueprint. You have where you want your organization to go, and you get to build the blueprint for it. But the one that I find most relevant to organizations is like all of these puzzle pieces. And you think of it as each one of these puzzle pieces represents somebody in your organization. They make a contribution to something bigger. Now, I don't know if you've recently done a puzzle, but you have a puzzle, you have a box, you dump out all the pieces on the table, you get something that looks like this. And then what do you do next? You maybe do the edges because it's easier. You do the corners, maybe you do the edges, and then you have to figure out what's in the middle. Well, how do you know what's in the middle? How do you know what that picture is? Well, it's ultimately the picture that's on the front of the box. And if you don't have alignment, then you have different people accomplishing different things towards a different future. As in, if you don't have alignment, everybody is going in their own direction and nobody is moving in the same direction. And I'll talk a little bit about it later, but what it causes is confusion. It causes frustration. It causes wastes of time, money, and energy. It causes uncertainty. And it doesn't ultimately accomplish what you want to accomplish within your organization. You want to have a strategic plan, you want to be successful, but if you don't have alignment, I want you to consider that you can't actually get there because people are working on different things. And as a practice, it's been the #1 thing that I have found that drives organizational success, is having clarity and alignment as to what that future is. So now I want to get into the strategic planning process. Now, when we look at strategy development, I want you to think about it as not a one-time activity, because some people have like a set it and forget it kind of approach to strategic planning, and I'll go over that shortly. But I want you to think that strategy development and creating alignment with your team is, in fact, a process. It starts with first assessing where you are, looking inside and outside, where are we currently? Planning, as in where do we want to go, figuring out actually what are the things we need to do to get us to where we want to go. Aligning, making sure we're all on the same page in terms of what we are trying to accomplish and making sure that we're moving in the same direction. Executing, as in moving the plan forward, putting it in place, and then measuring. How are we doing on our plan? Are we actually successful in accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish? And then going back to assessing and repeating the cycle, and doing that as often as important to you, so that you can look at today's training as an opportunity to improve this process and not just creating a plan outright. So when we look at strategic planning, we think about it in stages. And depending on where you are right now, you might find yourself at a different part in the planning stage. You might be somebody who said, well, do we even need strategic planning? Do I need to be doing a plan like this? You might be doing it once in a while. Wow. I'm so sorry about the jumpiness here. I don't know what's happening with my slides today, guys. Guys and gals, rather. So occasionally you might have done a plan a couple of years ago, but you can't find it, or you have it on the shelf and you have to dig it out, or there's a file somewhere, and there's a lot of people who do that. You might have a plan and you actually are clear on where you are and where you're going, which is excellent. The next stage after that is getting alignment with the plan. So staff have action items and there's culture transformation in place. And what we really look at is taking companies and organizations from stage 3 to stage 4, getting alignment and having that culture transformation and getting everybody engaged. And the sort of ideal in our mind of strategic planning is performance management. Everybody has monthly, quarterly KPI measurements, action items are being tracked and measured, and you're really running on all cylinders as an organization. So the opportunity out of alignment is to get to stages 4 and 5, where you have the ideal culture that you want, and then you're tracking and executing your strategic plan. So how do you go about doing that? Do you want to have an offsite or an on-site meeting? Should you do a half day or a full day, or 2 to 3 days? I've talked to some people that do it over weeks. I had a client that I just talked to, and the full project for their strategic plan took about 18 months from beginning to end. So there's a lot of different things that you want to consider. Do you want to do strategy work every month, every quarter, or year? Some people do daily huddles for 7 minutes to talk about their strategy. Who's going to make the agenda? What is the stuff that's going to get covered? What is the objectives for each day? What are you trying to accomplish? And are there going to be, team building activities? Are we doing it just to talk about strategy, or are we trying to focus on culture and engagement? So those are all of the questions that people ask when they're thinking about, hey, I want to do some sort of strategy session. Now, because we facilitated a lot of meetings, we see that there's a lot of different compositions of meetings. Maybe you want to have your board of directors, the highest level of leadership inside that meeting. Maybe you want to have senior leadership, VPs and directors included in that, either separate or together with the board. You might have team leads that are part of it as well. And then you might have individual people within teams of their departments, or you might have a planning session with all of those. So we sort of look at it top down. And then, of course, within team leads and departments are individuals. You wouldn't do a strategic planning session with an individual. So there's no right answer, and they all have different components that you're going to need to include in your planning process. And so there's a lot of opportunity to get it right and a lot of opportunity to get it wrong. So another thing to consider, who at what level you're going to do your planning session is who's actually going to participate. Are you going to bring stakeholders in there, people who have a stake in your organization? Are you going to have senior leaders? Are you going to include frontline employees or include middle management? So you can sort of pepper in pieces at different groups, but by and large, I found that as you add more people, conversations become richer, so you get greater context, but the process becomes more complex and it's harder to sort of get aligned and get organized. You can imagine if you're trying to pick a restaurant for 1 person or 2 people, it's a different experience than if you're trying to pick a restaurant for 12 people and all get agreement. It's a really simple example, but fundamentally, it's what you're trying to accomplish is figure out where you're going to go. So, one of the questions we get asked a lot is, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days or more. What is the sort of magic? And there's no right answer, but what we've found for SMEs, small to medium enterprises, most of them benefit from at least 2 days of strategic planning, like actually going through the whole process and making it worthwhile if you're going to create, a short to medium term plan. And then an additional half day or so to do the action planning, to do the goal setting, and basically unpack everything that comes out of the planning session. So in our experience, no matter where you're at in terms of creating your strategic plan, a 1-day session will give you about 5 really good in-depth conversations. By the time you get started, set the ground rules, you'll be able to get high level of alignment, but it typically goes fairly fast. A 2-day session, you have time for about 8 to 10 conversations, great for most organizations, and you may still need time for action planning, depending on how much preparation you did ahead of time. And then 3+ days, great for complex organizations, making specific decisions, deeper action planning, aligning multiple groups. Why I want to, showcase this is that you really want to do justice to the process. And if you don't put enough time on the front end, you're just going to have more complications on the back end. You're either going to have an incomplete plan, you're going to have confusion, or there's just going to be missing steps, and then people are going to sort of fall off on that path moving forward. So typically 2 to 3 days is ideal for most organizations. And if you're a small group, you have maybe 2, 3, or 4 people, you can get your strategic planning session done in 1 day. And we have some resources to help you with that, including a 1 and 2 day agenda and our strategic planning template. So I want to talk to you about goals and objectives for the meeting. The number one thing when we have people come to us after downloading a resource and we chat with them is, what are you hoping to get out of this meeting? Like, what is a win for you? And it's important to set the objectives early and stay focused on the agenda. What are the top 1, 2, and 3 things you want to accomplish in the meeting, and making sure that they're organized in a way that's going to have the biggest bang for your buck. Today I was talking to somebody and they were saying, hey, I want to, do some team bonding. I want to talk about vision, and I want to answer some questions about the team. And what I was thinking was doing the team bonding, then the vision stuff, and then the team building, or questions, vision, team building. And I said, well, if you do the team building first, then it'll allow a greater atmosphere for the team to be successful. And if you answer the questions before that or after that, then it will allow them to participate fully, because they won't be wondering, oh, I still have that question. I hope it gets covered today. It's sort of like that feeling of, when you forgot to lock the house, or did you turn the stove off? All you can do is think about that thing. So why setting goals and objectives and having them in the right order for your day is so important is that you really want to maximize the engagement of everybody present. You want to make sure that you make the most of your time. And there is a real art to sequencing the events so that they build upon each other. And then you sort of get like compound interest on the activities that were done earlier in the day or earlier in the session. So be really clear about what the objectives of your planning session are, and then stay focused on the agenda in the context of the day, so you don't go down rabbit holes. Because I've seen a lot of organizations that say our meetings are often, they go around in circles, or we go in a bunch of different directions. And if you have an agenda and you set an objective, then if anybody goes off track, if they talk for 2 minutes or more about something that's not on page, you say, okay, bringing us back to the agenda. And that's really the value of a facilitator, whether you use us or you use somebody else. The other thing that I find is sometimes challenging for organizations when they do these, strategic planning sessions, is they don't make the distinction between strategic work and operational work. So the operational work is making typically yes, no decisions independently, and then, getting the thing done. Strategic work looks long-term and thinks both inside and outside the organization. The strategic work should align the team and ultimately guide the operational work. Said another way, the working in the business is the operational work, and working on the business or on the organization is the strategic work. You want to think 30,000 feet strategically so that you're doing the right things that are going to get you to where you want to go. And sometimes they're like diametrically opposed in your head. And if your team isn't used to thinking strategically, then they're going to think operationally, and it's going to get you too in the weeds. So if you've ever heard somebody say, guys, we're in the weeds, that's because they're probably thinking of operational versus strategic. And a facilitator can help pull that up. And if you don't have a facilitator, you're the facilitator. So it's important to really make sure that people are pulling themselves up and thinking strategically. So some of the things to do before the meeting, if you want to get alignment, if you're trying to get everybody on the same page and you want to have a powerful strategic planning process, before you have your strategy meeting, create a structured and purposeful agenda. Really be clear about what alignment is to you and what do you want to have everybody on the same page on. You might not be able to get everything covered. So what are the top 3 things you need to accomplish? One of the things that you can do as pre-work is survey leadership and staff to see how they feel about the current culture, strategy, and alignment, and use that as a baseline. It doesn't really help you if you go into a planning session or if you go into strategy meetings and think that everything is sort of rosy, and then you get into the session and you have all of these sort of challenges and conflicts. So what'll help is if you sort of set a baseline through a survey, formal or informal, to see how people are feeling about the culture, strategy, and alignment. And those will be the building blocks to creating a successful strategic plan and ultimately having the alignment. We've done sessions where the plan is fine, but there's so many organizational health issues in terms of communication, delegation, things that people haven't done, past strategic plans that have failed and they're carrying forward. If you don't deal with that stuff, you're never going to be aligned in moving forward, because people will just be like, yeah, right. Or no, I'm not interested in doing that. And you can get a lot of resistance. The other thing that you want to consider before your planning meeting is to provide market and financial data required for decision making. If you need to make a decision in the strategy session, you got to be equipped with the information required. So is there any market financial data, anything you need to provide context if the purpose of your meeting is to make a final decision on something. So how do you get that information? How do you get that market data? How do you get the benchmarks for culture, strategy, and execution? And how do you support getting alignment? Well, you can do it a lot of ways. You can do a survey. We do a survey with our clients before we do a strategy session. You can have internal meetings ahead of time. So set the stage through little meetings and iterative meetings to plan for this bigger offsite. You can have other offsite meetings, whether that's, hey, we went bowling and I asked our team how we would feel about doing a strategy session, or we actually had a different offsite just to sort of get out of our constraints of what we think. It's a different way to solicit feedback. Also, if you're doing sort of an iterative planning process, that would be another opportunity there. You can use HR software to track engagement, satisfaction, and retention. The software that is out there is really complex and thorough. So you can use all of that data as benchmarks to see, hey, how are we doing? And then, whatever way makes sense for you. Use a whiteboard, use smiley faces, talk to people in the halls. Whatever makes sense for you in order to solicit feedback and get where your people are at, that's what's most important. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about, and I mentioned it earlier in terms of who's going to be participating in the meetings, are stakeholders. So stakeholders are the people who hold a stake in your organization. I want you to think about what is their influence and power, and what is their interest in what you're doing, and what is important to them. I've seen strategy sessions and strategic plans be completely, kibosh, railroaded, don't move forward, because the people who were planning and executing didn't consider all of their stakeholders through the process. And then somebody who wasn't consulted basically said, well, I was never asked, or I was never told this, or nobody ran this by me, or to the point where it was satisfactory to them. And then they basically created a bunch of challenges for that person that made the project inexecutable. So as a leader driving strategy and wanting to get alignment, you want to make sure that not only your employees are engaged or your team is engaged, but anybody who has high influence or high interest in what you're doing, and you can get them engaged in the process. So a way to think of this stakeholder analysis to support getting alignment is to look at where people are at in terms of influence and interest. If they have high influence and low interest, just keep them happy. If they have high interest but low influence or low power, just keep them informed. All they want is information. If they have high influence and high interest in what you're doing, monitor them closely and really build a plan to engage with them. Build a strategy just for your stakeholder engagement. Make sure you understand what's important to them, and then deliver all of that in terms of a timely manner and in a way that's going to make them happy. And if they have low influence and low interest, just keep an eye on them, because they may move into one of those sectors, and you really want to make sure that you have them bought into what you're doing and engaged and happy. So now I want to talk to you a couple case studies and what we've done with our clients to sort of showcase the broad depth and breadth of strategic planning and getting alignment. So one of the case studies is a health and wellness organization, primary care organization in Oklahoma called Stigler. And what we did is we did a 3-day offsite with their team. And the first day and a half was with the board. And the board set the vision, the mission, and the strategic priorities. The next, like the second half of the second day, was the management team then came in and was able to collaborate with the board so that they were all aligned in terms of what that future was and why they were going there, but also were able to get engaged in the process because they were able to see sort of how the process came about. They were able to get the information and ask some key questions, but also really make it collaborative. So everybody was aligned, everybody was moving in the same direction and on the same page. And then in day 3, the management team and the senior leaders, they were the ones who then said, great, we have our direction. Now let's move forward into the action planning. And it was a really awesome process because it got the top 30 people in the organization engaged. It was really high energy and people had a lot of fun, and it was really worthwhile for them. Yes, it took those people sort of out of work, but they were working on the organization instead of in it. And that's the thing that really made a huge difference for them to actually execute their plan, as well as focus on what was most important for them. Another case study from last year is we worked with the Central Bank of Fiji, the Reserve Bank of Fiji, on their strategic plan. And what was really cool for them, because they only had a day and a half to get everybody organized, and they flew me from Vancouver, and they said, okay, well, we're going to do a lot of the pre-work. We're going to do the current state. We're going to look at where we want to go. We have our vision mission, but we really need to do is get aligned around what's going to get in our way in terms of our risks, what's going to challenge us in terms of our culture, and what are the things we need to prioritize in terms of action planning. And, this was at the time one of my most challenging sessions because it was late Saturday night. You can imagine we're supposed to be done at 5, it's like 6:30, and the room is divided on the vision of what success looks like. And we looked at the vision and we said, well, one group, half of the people want this thing and half of the people want this thing. And it was really just around the language, around the wording of the vision. And I said, well, fundamentally, are we on the same page that we want to go to this one place, regardless if we use this wording or this wording? And they're like, yeah, we do. And what was so funny is that people got blocked in terms of the language. And then when they actually realized that they wanted the picture, that like outcome, then once they realized that they all wanted the outcome, everything flowed after that. It opened up the room. People were engaged. People were happy. And just this great quote, they say, in all of the time that we've been at the bank, we have never agreed until today. And it was just so awesome because when we had, it was 45 people all on one single trajectory, and it just created a whole new space for everybody to engage. Everybody was happy. Everybody knew how their piece contributed, even if they didn't own a strategic priority or they didn't know even what the goals or strategic plans were, the action plans. Everybody knew where they were going, and they knew because the outcome was so clear, that picture was so clear, they knew what they needed to do to make it happen. Another one was with the Faculty of Applied Science at the University of British Columbia. So we did a really cool scenario planning exercise where we took 5 faculties, 3 different groups for each faculty, so staff, students, and faculty within it, and we ended up doing 20-something different stakeholder engagement sessions. And we created 76 different universes in a tool we use called scenario planning. But the purpose of this was that they didn't want to have a plan that was pushed on to everybody. They really wanted to engage everyone in the process to make sure that they feel heard, to make sure that they got their points of view across. And instead of just like coming up with the plan and just giving it to them, it was a way for everybody to discover and realize for themselves, like, oh, this is really what we need to do if we want to be successful in this changing landscape of education. And it was really awesome. And one of the things that I really like to tell people is, you can't tell anybody what to do. If I told you what to do, you would resist it. But I always invite, or I suggest, or recommend, or show people, hey, you can do this. And it's sort of like alignment. You can't force anybody to be aligned. But if you show them the benefits of being aligned, then it's for them to decide if they want to do it. But this was just super cool. We engaged hundreds of people. We created multiple universes, but at the end of all of those universes, looking at a 10-year future, we were actually able to create a lot of alignment because we say, well, fundamentally, we all see the future as the same way. And even if we can't predict the future, we can sort of imagine 4 different worlds, and we're probably going to end up in one of those 4. So how are we successful in those worlds? And it was just an awesome experience. Everybody loved it. And it got them out of their shell to think outside of the box, but also to like really honestly share what was important to them. And because we had set it up in a really open way, we got really great quality data and information. So it's just another one of those options where you can engage a lot of people over a lot of time, but the results is worth it because it impacts so many people. So how do you actually get alignment? What are the things that you need to do to get alignment within your organization? I want you to think that, or consider that when you want alignment or you want a strategic plan, you're probably thinking of vision or mission or values or strategic priorities or action items, okay? And I know that those are the things that you want because those are sort of the deliverables of most strategic planning sessions. But I want you to think of the long-term outcomes. The alignment out of a planning session means everybody's going to be focused in the same way. Buy-in. People are going to want to move that forward, and people are going to want to engage in this planning process. You're going to get direction, like actually know where you're going. And one of my favorite quotes is in Alice in Wonderland, where she gets to a fork in the road and she asks the Cheshire Cat, like, which road should I take? And he says, well, where are you trying to get to? And she says, well, I don't know. And he says, well, any road will get you there. So if you're not sure about where you're going, then it doesn't really matter what you do from a strategy perspective, because any road will get you there. So when you take the time of getting alignment with your team and getting that clarity and buy-in, then you're going to have direction and ultimately know how to be successful. You're going to have certainty. Like, it's going to be clear as day because it's going to be written on a whiteboard in front of you. Here's where we're going. And uncertainty causes fear, confusion. And that's why they say that 73% of employees are disengaged. It's because they're uncertain about what their future is, and they're uncertain about how they contribute. So if you can create alignment with your team, if you can create a clear strategic plan, you're going to have certainty and people are going to be at ease in the organization. And finally, you're going to get support. You know, if you can create a strategic plan that's aligned, then people are going to support you to execute the plan. They're going to be helpful to you, and everybody's going to say, hey, we're all in it together. We might be at different levels in the organization. We might want different things, but ultimately, you're going to have everybody supporting one another and creating a great, collaborative environment. Now, when we think of alignment, when we think of a clear vision of the future, when you know your successful future, you're only basically doing one of two things. You're either moving closer towards it or further away. And that's basically the end of it. You're either moving closer towards it or further away. And that's what's really powerful having alignment and clarity, is that you actually know what you're doing and making sure that everybody is going to the same place as you. So how do you get alignment? So number one is get buy-in. Bring people into the strategic planning process. Allow your stakeholders to contribute. Match goals and motivation. So make sure that you align what the company or organization's goals are with the goals of your individual. You know, they might not care if you make $100 million this year, but they may care that they know that they contributed to it. They may care that they have a sales target. They may just want to be part of a team and be able to work on something extra to support their resume. They may just want to have more fun at work. So matching what's important to you as the company or the organization, you as the senior leader, and and then the people within your organization. Getting alignment, you want to communicate clearly and simply. You want to explain to people where you're going and how they can get involved. And the easier you make your communication for them to understand, the easier it's going to be to get buy-in and alignment. And finally, if you want to get alignment with your team, you got to give them the capability to execute. Are they given the tools they need to succeed? When I say tools, time, money, energy, people. If they don't have that, then they're going to be frustrated and they're not going to want to go to where you're going. And then you won't have alignment. And you need to have really everybody on board. Otherwise, if they're not going to where you're going, then they're going somewhere else. And I don't know if you really want them going somewhere else. And ultimately, like, strategy is about choices. Of course, it's the choice between doing strategic and operational work. It's the choice between, pulling people into your plan or pushing it on them. It's the choice of what not to do on any given day. And then you can choose right now to say, hey, do you want to choose alignment? Do you want to create a strategic plan where people are bought in, engaged? Or do you want to just create the strategic plan where you have the words on the page and people may or may not follow it? And so the choice is ultimately yours about what you do, and is it going to get you to where you want to go? And that's all I really care about, is that you are empowered and have a clear path to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Hopefully, your choices lead you towards there. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our process and how you can use it within your organization to create a framework for your strategic plan. So how we prepare for our clients. So first, we survey meeting participants. So we ask them some of the key questions in the planning session. The reason is it gives people time and space to sort of consider their answers and think about it. Some people like to process things. They're not necessarily like extroverted, but they just like the processing time. So when you ask them the key questions, they can process it and think in a way that works for them. And then they can communicate in a way that's effective and that they feel heard. The other thing that we do is when we do the survey, we then send the survey out for everybody else to review. So they've seen the answers once already, and then it allows people to review them a second time so that nothing is brand new, and it cuts down on the meeting time. So we can really make the most of our time together. We interview senior leaders. Sometimes we don't get all the context that we need out of the survey. So we can really get a better chance of understanding what's important to them, what are some of the things that they might not be saying, and ultimately, like, what do they want to get out of the planning session? So we can see where the alignment is just walking in the door. We also read past strategic plans and other documentation. It's just a good way to say, hey, how did we get to where we are now? Are they successful? Where are some of the gaps they might have had in the past? And then we do industry research. So we look at what's happening in the world around us, what's happening relevant to this client or this organization, or this industry, so that we can get a better understanding and also like talk the lingo, because we want to make sure that we're saying the right things and understanding the business or organization. Now, in our process of aligned strategy development, we look at 5 steps. And you can use these. It's, pretty much every organization, every strategic plan follows these steps. We just call them this. And this is what we call aligned strategy development. We look at where we are now. Okay, then that includes our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, as well as a pestle analysis. So looking at the trends that are happening in the future. We want to know where we are and then where the world is going. And as Wayne Gretzky says, don't go where the puck is, go where the puck is going to be. So if you don't think about where the puck is going to be, in hockey, of course, then you're sort of setting yourself up for failure, because you're assuming that there's going to be no change in the world around you. And this is recorded in 2020. And as you know, technology is changing, politics are changing, economics are changing, health is changing, everything is changing at such a rapid pace. It's one of the reasons we don't do 5-year strategic plans. We find that the world changes so fast that we don't want to do so far ahead, because then you're just going to be reactive. So we look at more of an iterative planning process. We look at where are we going? So what is our ideal future state, which includes mission, vision, and values. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And what are sort of the behaviors and expectations that we want within our team? So if you're looking to create mission, vision, values, then you can follow our process to accomplish that. What is going to get in our way? We identify risks and roadblocks early so that we can be proactive instead of reactive. Many organizations plan their strategy without actually thinking about what's going to go wrong. So then when something goes wrong, it throws them off track. Also, if you don't plan for the risks, then it's going to catch you off guard and actually derail what you need to do. So when we look at risks, we actually inform our plan with the risks. The risks or the roadblocks are the things that are going to get in the way of us accomplishing what we want to accomplish. So we don't just arbitrarily pick strategic priorities. We say, what are the biggest things that are going to get in our way? And strategically, what are the things we need to do to mitigate that if it's relevant? And that really helps us stay focused, prioritize on what's most important. Not all risks are created equal. So really understanding what those are. And then finally, how are we doing in our plan? So baking in goal setting, accountability. What do we need to do to get us to where we want to go? And that's strategic priority. So prioritizing, instead of doing a lot of things poorly, let's do a couple things really well. How do we actually set those goals? So SMART goals for each of those, and then as well as qualitative goals. And then action plans. Where are we going? What do we need to focus on? What are the individual things I need to do today, tomorrow, next week to accomplish our plan? And when you have a structure like that, it really helps everybody stay focused, stay aligned, because you're, as a leadership team, aligned on the vision, your strategy is aligned to your vision. And then after that, you get the entire team engaged on the strategy itself. And finally, how are we doing on our plan? Are we accomplishing the things we want to accomplish? We have specific goals. Are we meeting targets? Are we on track, or are we not? And then basically repeating the cycle that we talked about earlier in the day. So what we do, so if you're interested in having somebody facilitate your strategic planning session, we offer flat rate strategic planning support. So we'll do the survey and the pre-work for you to take that off your desk, and we'll do it as a neutral third party. So we find that people are really open, or way more open, when it's neutral and somebody doesn't have like a skin in the game. We'll facilitate your meeting for you. So we'll come on site and lead your planning session, 2 or 3 days to make sure that you get all of the planning pieces accomplished. We'll create documents for you in Word and PowerPoint, so then you can use them as a verbatim summary, but also as a tool to communicate the plan to your team. And then we also provide coaching calls to support the rollout of the plan. And then we provide implementation support and cascading planning meetings. So whether you want, whenever you need it support, a couple hours a month, or you want to have your team individually coached for change management, support rolling it out with their teams or whatever you need, we have 3 packages to support you in terms of making that happen. And we can take all of that for you so you don't have to do it. So in summary, around how to get alignment, you want to create one clear vision of success. That's that picture, that's that puzzle, that's that blueprint. And when you have one clear vision of success that everybody's bought into, then you know that you're either going there or you're going away from it. Engaging stakeholders in the process, making sure that you have the people that are interested and have power in your organization to keep them informed, have them bought in, and have them, as well as your team, aligned and engaged in the process. I want you to think of communicating top down and bottom up. So that means as a senior leadership, you need to make sure that your team knows what the strategy is and how they're going to move it forward. But you also want to listen to them to say, hey, what are the things we need to be doing to move that forward? Where are the gaps? What are the challenges? And open those lines of communication. We don't talk about it here, but you also want to communicate across. So another level of communication that you want to think about. And I want you to think about strategy as an ongoing and recurring process to reach your vision, not just one meeting. Everything that you're trying to accomplish, everything that your plan stands for, and the future of your organization is your vision. And so you want to keep doing work towards making that happen. And we look at strategy as an iterative process because, what happened last year is going to inform what you do this year and what you do next year. And so you really want to have a sort of a lean or an iterative approach, or I recommend a lean or iterative approach to strategy development. So you have a sort of a moving target for vision, and then you prioritize in order, accomplish your strategic priorities, and then move on to something else. Priorities are not designed to be worked on forever. It's you focus on a couple things, you have clear measures in terms of what they are, you accomplish them, and you move on to something else. And that way you'll keep the momentum high. If you try to focus on too many things, you'll never accomplish anything. People will get burned out. You won't make any progress. So here's the opportunity, here's what's in it for you. And here's if you take on strategic planning wherever you're at, or if you want to follow our process because your strategic plans haven't worked thus far or haven't worked as well as you'd like them to. The opportunity of getting alignment and building a strategic plan with alignment in mind will help you have more progress. Like I said, you're going to focus on a few things, you're going to get them right. Instead of spreading your resources like peanut butter, you're going to focus on a couple things and accomplish them and move on. You're going to have more productivity from your team because people are actually going to know what they need to do and what they need to accomplish to be successful. You're empowering them to move forward on the plan. You're going to have better decision making because you're taking multiple perspectives. You're looking inside and outside of the organization, and you guys are going to think long term and not just short term. One of the organizations that I think about when I talk about pestle analysis and looking at trends is Blockbuster. Blockbuster, for those of you that don't know, used to rent VHS and DVDs, but they underestimated, my opinion, the power of digital. Netflix also was in the same business for a while, but they embraced digital much faster. And that's why Netflix is the giant company that you know now, and Blockbuster is not around. So better decision-making will help you long-term and short-term as well. You'll have less turnover because people will be engaged in their work. They'll know what to do. They won't want to quit. They won't hate their managers. And if you just look at the cost savings of less turnover in your organization, creating an aligned strategic plan will be worth it 100 times over. Because if you're going to lose people, that has a huge, huge cost to your bottom line. Less frustration. You have other things to do as a manager than micromanage or put out fires. So if you have a clear strategic plan where people are aligned around it, they're going to know what to do, and you're going to be able to focus on what's important to you, which means your job's going to be easier. Remember what I said when we first started, that I want to do this so you love your job. This is how, and this is why. And you're going to have less waste of resources. You're going to be more efficient with your time, money, and energy because you're going to be focused like a laser instead of sort of shooting all over the place like a shotgun. You're just going to accomplish more, and you're going to be more profitable. So if you're interested in profit, if you're interested in impact and the value of that, like the ROI, the return on investment, that's what alignment can do for you. And that's what following our process for strategic planning and aligned strategy development can give you. And ultimately, you'll accomplish your plan. And that's what it's all about. You want to look good as a manager. You want people to feel good about accomplishing things, and you want to move things forward. Like, you're not just doing a strategic plan for your health. There's an impact of your plan that impacts hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people when done well. So if you do it right, and if you get alignment, you'll accomplish your strategic plan. And if you don't, well, you might not. And then you'll just be back into frustrated plans that don't get accomplished, and you're wasting time and money, and people quit. So it's up to you. That's your strategic choice. So here's the next steps for you. Okay. We talked a lot about strategy. We talked a lot about the opportunity of alignment. We can talk about what that means for you, but ultimately it's up to you in terms of what you do and what actions you take today to move that forward. So if you want to learn our process, our step-by-step process for creating a strategic plan, you can enroll in our online course. We've made it to have it accessible to everybody around the world. It's $297. You can watch the content, download the workbooks, get your team aligned, and move your team forward. It's available 24/7. You can get instant access to it. I know we're re-recording the course, and we're adding more valuable content and really just updating it. You're gonna have lifetime access to it, but that's the cheapest price it's ever going to be, and it's like crazy value for what you're going to get and the outcome of your strategic plan. So I highly recommend you do that. Obviously, I'm biased, but if you're really committed to having your organization work, being a more effective leader, having better use of your time, and really being the leader instead of a manager in your organization, and you really want to be able to accomplish stuff and have your plan be successful, I highly recommend you take that course. And then you can also contact us for a personalized consultation. If you want some support with your plan, if you're looking for a facilitator to guide you through the process, to support you, happy to answer any questions or anything that you might need there. So SMEstrategy.net for anything that you want, including resources, and then /course to enroll in the course and get access today. So one of the things I want to leave you with is, I don't know if you've ever heard of a leader with no followers. What a leader with no followers, what are they doing? Well, they're just going for a walk. And if you have nobody bought into your plan, if you don't have alignment in your plan, then you're just going for a walk. And if you want to be a leader that's wanting to transform and be somebody who is effective with what they do, this is the opportunity for you to get alignment and to build a plan where you get buy-in. So I'm going to stick around for a little bit to answer any questions, but you can definitely email us. What do you want to have support with in terms of alignment and driving your strategy forward? If you want to have a conversation about your strategic plan, you can visit us at SMEstrategy.net. You can email us at info@SMEstrategy, and then you can call us at 1-855-895-5446. So I hope that helps. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Me sticking around. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A. And if I don't see any questions, then that'll be it for tonight. So I hope that helps. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to sharing with you very soon. Just enter your questions in the chat box, and yeah. Perfect. So Paul asked, what is the cost for our strategic planning services? For a 2-day offsite in North America is $8,500 US. That includes all of the pre-work, and that includes the post-work. And then depending on what your challenges are, or if you need more time or less time, then we can obviously create something custom for you. And then, some people want to have longer sessions. Some people need multiple facilitators. We've done sessions as small as 3 people and as big as 140 people. But we offer flat rate pricing because we want to make it easy for you to be able to get the support that you need and move that forward. Perfect. Excellent, everyone. So I just really wanted to thank you again for being part of today's workshop. I hope that helped. Please do send us an email at SMEstrategy.net if you have any other questions. I'll be happy to answer that. And then be sure to check for our next webinar. We're going to do some more webinars on culture, on execution, and anything else that you might want. And then we can also talk about tracking and monitoring, because I know that's something that people are really interested in as well. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys very soon. Take care. Have a great night.